Welcome to episode number 24 of the Pit Crew podcast. We're ready to get at it here today. We have Jeff Maconi joining us very, very soon. I'm here with my co-host, Cameron Romano. Cameron, episode number 24, buddy. Second episode of the year. Woo! DriveSmart, back at it. DriveSmart.auto. Episode number 2. How you feeling, buddy?
We are so back, baby. So glad to have Jeff Maconi on for tonight's episode. We got a lot of great questions lined up for him. DLB, do you want to bring him in?
Let's bring him in. So with that said, we're bringing in Jeff Maconi. Jeff, you got your fire suit on, buddy?
I got the fire suit on. I'm feeling good. I just wrapped up some iRacing stuff, and I'm ready to go, man. It's so great to be back. We did a lot of work with DriveSmart last year. I met him down at the track, saw you down there. Been a ton of fun, man. I'm really looking forward to this. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So you are a race car driver, Jeff Maconi. Now, I think we got to clear that up. You are a race car driver, Jeff Maconi. How does that feel hearing that?
It's crazy, and it hasn't fully sunk in yet because I haven't done too much driving. I started off last year. I've known Brayton Laster for years. Ever since a car that I was sponsoring, he ramped off of it at Talladega. So he went flying in. They were wrecking all over the place. Brayton got caught up on it and literally got launched in the air. And I don't know if he saw the Maconi Setup Shop logo as he was flying by, but he hit me up a couple weeks later and was like, hey, I need help getting ready for the Knoxville truck race. And so we helped him out there. We've been friends ever since. And finally, I was talking to him last year, and I'm like, man, I got to get in the car. Like, I'm 20... God, how old am I? I'm 26 years old, which is old to get into racing, and I that's not lost on me. And I'm like, I've got to do this, and I've got to do it now, and I've got to see if I can. If I go out and I suck, then you know what? I can say I tried. But I had to say that I tried it, and yeah, I got started last year. I did one race. I've got a lot of stuff lined up. I was going to run the test at Daytona, and then Mayhem happened. That's a whole story in and of itself, and rescheduled. I'm going to probably do an ARCA test next month is what we're looking at. Running at least one race, probably 2 or 3, and doing a bunch of late model racing and stuff in between. I'm excited for it. It's crazy to actually look at myself at videos and stuff where I'm driving a race car and I'm like, that's me. I did that, but I got to do it, and I hope to continue doing it for as long as I can.
So without spoiling any announcements, is there a racetrack or style of racetrack, I should say, so we don't spoil anything? Like, are you looking at short tracks, super speedways, mile and a halves? What ideally do you want to do for your debut in ARCA?
Well, the ARCA process is very interesting in how they do approvals, and I'm not sure what the exact criteria are, but every case is looked at individually. So I did a late model test, I did a late model race. I've been involved in racing for years, sponsoring a lot of cars, working behind the scenes. I've been in the garage, I've been a sponsor, I've done pretty much everything in racing except own the car or drive a car. And so I finally started driving the car. But right now, my approval for ARCA is for anything under a mile. So I've got to do some short track racing first, just so they know, hey, I'm good to go. I'm not going to do anything crazy. So I live near Nashville, and I'm really working hard to set everything up. I've got 3 seats that are open to me. So basically, drivers rent the seats, and that's why we have sponsorship. So we pay the teams to set up the cars and bring it to the track and get us ready and help everything get going. And so that's why we have sponsors as well. So when I go out and race, I don't make any money. I'm sort of losing money to do it, but that's the sport of racing. And so I have the seats available for Nashville and a couple other races. Iowa is one I would love to do. That'd be so cool. Salem would be really cool to do. I would love to run Toledo, but that's the season finale, so I don't know how much I want to jump in and risk any championship implications. But I'm really excited to hopefully run Nashville. That's the goal. I have the opportunities available. Just got to finish up some of the funding stuff, but I'd love to put it together. I have a couple good lines in the water. I'm hoping will work out, and we'll see if they come through. I would love to bring them on board.
Absolutely. So we're going to get more into the race car driver part of the interview here in a moment, but I want to know about your upbringing. How did you get into racing, NASCAR, iRacing, and then obviously the Maconi Setup Shop?
It was really, the introduction into racing was I was maybe 3 or 4 years old, and my cousin had a NASCAR game on his Xbox, and that was when Xboxes were like brand new. So this was like 2001, 2002. Um, and I saw him racing. And I'm like, what is that? And he's like, it's NASCAR. And I'm like, oh, that's a cool like video game, or as much as my 3 or 4 year old brain could comprehend it. And he's like, no, it's a real sport. They actually race. And I'm like, that's crazy. And he's like, yeah, you can watch it on TV. So then I'm begging my parents to work the TV and like find the NASCAR race and all that. So they had no interest in NASCAR beforehand. My brother, he's 5 years older than me. He was never really interested, but he got into it at the same time. And I was a die-hard Jeff Gordon fan. I loved him. I wanted to see him win every week. I'd be so mad when he didn't win because I didn't understand anything in the sport of racing. It was just either Jeff Gordon won or it was a bad race, and that's how I viewed it for years. And then I turned, I don't know, probably 9 or 10, and was like, oh, there's a lot more in this that really brings it all together. I would watch a lot of racing at Stafford Motor Speedway. I grew up there. I love that track. It's a really special place to me, and it's really cool to see all of the stuff that they continue to do. I had the opportunity to work there as starting out in the replay trailer, and I guess I didn't do a really good job there because they, after like 2 or 3 weeks, handed me a microphone and were like, "Hey, go down on pit road, go talk to the drivers." And I was a bit better at that, so I did a lot of pit road interviews. I did that for probably 3 or 4 years, and it was so much fun. Every Friday night, going up to the track, and I'd get there at 2 p.m. Racing would start at 7. I'd just spend those hours talking to all the drivers, learning about what they were doing, learning about how they're setting up the cars and the changes they're making, and all of that stuff. And that's what really got me into racing. And I was like, I want to do this, work somewhere in racing for the rest of my life. And I had a ton of fun doing that. When COVID started, we did the Stafford Speedway E Series. So we brought everything online because COVID started in like March, and season started in April for Stafford, and obviously they couldn't go to the track, so we helped bring that to iRacing, and that was about when I started doing Maconi Setup Shop stuff. So I got on iRacing in 2018 when I was in college, and I literally had a Thrustmaster TMX wheel that I bought using my paycheck from. I worked at a golf course at the time. I don't play golf, but they put me in charge of the pro shop. It was the best job I ever had. It was so much fun working there. And so I bought the Thrustmaster TMX wheel. I didn't even like clamp it to the desk. I just had it sitting on there, and I'd hold it in place, and I'd be sliding around, and I was terrible. I was so bad. And then I was like, okay, I gotta get the pedals right and get a little bit better stuff and all of that. And by about 3 or 4 years of iRacing, I was pretty good in the modifieds, especially, which if you're not from the Northeast, you probably haven't ever seen them in person, but the SK and Tour modifieds are incredibly cool. I absolutely love the cars to death. I saw them every week of my life for years because I was up at Stafford, and they're the home of the SK modifieds. So I'd run those on iRacing a lot, and I got pretty good at building the setups for them. So when COVID started, I was in college. I was going into my senior year of engineering. I was in my junior year of engineering at Purdue, and I was like, well, I basically went home for spring break, and they sent an email out saying, nobody come back. We're going to do everything online. And engineering classes do not carry well into the online world. So I ended up with a lot of free time, and I just started building setups and racing them. And then I was like, yeah, if you pay me $5, I'll give you the same setup. And then a guy named Bill Gross came to me, and he's like, hey, I'll build late model sets for you. And he was a lot better than me at building the late model sets. So he came on board. He actually was the first guy I ever hired. That was in June of 2020. And to this day, he still works for me. Every week he's doing setups. So he's probably built 250 setups that we've put out and sold. And I got to meet him last year at Nashville. It was really cool to sort of see all that come together. So he still does our late model setups. And then more people came on board, and more people and more people. And now there's I believe eight different setup builders. We've got the entertainment side, which does broadcasting and stuff. We host and organize races. So it really all sort of snowballed quickly. And I graduated college with my engineering degree, went and worked for a year as an engineer, and said, this is just not what I want to do when I have this opportunity of iRacing for a job in front of me. So I took it full time in September 2022, I think. Maybe, yeah, 2022. and I've been doing it for 2.5 years now, and every day is a blessing. It's so fun, so cool that I get to do this, and it is not lost on me how lucky I am that I get to do it and just sit in my office and, drive virtual race cars, work on virtual race cars, and somehow that snowballed into driving real race cars, which is what I want to sort of progress into while also keeping Maconi Setup Shop and Maconi Entertainment rolling.
When you decided to go full time, was that a difficult decision to make? Because I know when anyone goes into their own business, their own career, and especially when it's on the internet, it has the stigma that it's very risky and it could fail and all this stuff. Obviously, it worked out for you, but when you're in that moment, 2022, how did it feel when it's like, all right, I'm going to pursue this, I'm going to chase this, I'm going to make it work?
It was scary. It was terrifying. Definitely one of the riskier things I've ever done, and I did a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that it was sustainable. But yeah, it was definitely very scary. I sold a portion of the business, basically in exchange for a line of credit, so I could take, instead of a loan where you get the full amount of the loan at once and you pay interest based on that. I found someone who was willing to buy a portion of the company on the condition that they could then be bought out for the same amount that I was looking for in a loan, but as a line of credit. So let's say it's, $10,000 for a line of credit. If you take that as a loan, if there's a 10% interest rate, then it would be $11,000 because 10% of 10,000, etc. But if a line of credit, you have a 10% interest rate and $10,000, you can only, you may only take 1,000 out. You only need $1,000 right now, but you need that other 9,000 possibly. You only pay that 10% on the $1,000, so the interest is a lot lower. But the downside is you don't have as much cash on hand because you don't take the full loan. So that's all very technical stuff. But basically, I got a very good opportunity to work with a great partner, and they were just completely silent behind the scenes. They pretty much said, I know, either I'm out the money that you take from the line of credit, and that's it, in 5 years, or in 5 years this blows up because online businesses were exploding at the time. Either it blows up and then, they get back and they get the percentage that they own is worth a lot more. So they make a lot of money in the end, which is what ended up happening. So it was very scary though, definitely, because one, I'm now going from like a stable job where I basically go to my office. I worked at Hankook Tires, so my job was to oversee the 12,000 tires that were made every day. So I would sit and look at spreadsheets of data about all the different measurements of the tires and what ones were good, what ones were bad, and then figure out what was breaking in the factory that was causing the issues that we were seeing with the tires, because not everyone is going to be perfect. I went from a very stable job there that I really enjoyed to I'm now working from home, which is really cool and really great, but I have to focus on building the brand. I have to expand it. I have to figure out what all is involved with running a business full time. I have to make sure that the company's making enough money that we can pay all the employees. I have to make sure that it's making enough money that I can pay myself so that I can continue living where I was living and doing everything that I needed to do. I had to figure out really how social media worked and all the algorithms and how to leverage those. What I found to be the biggest challenge and biggest factor is figuring out how you go from a very social environment where I'm going and I'm collaborating with coworkers every day and I'm walking around seeing people and there's a tens of thousands of square feet of factory that I'm walking through and managing, to I'm at home, I'm in front of my computer for 15 hours a day, and I have to make sure that this business is growing. I don't, there's nobody here telling you, I don't have a manager that says you need to do this, 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 and this. You don't have someone looking over your shoulder saying, hey, that's not right. That's going to be incorrect. You need to do this better. You're completely blind. And so I'm figuring out what works and what doesn't. And really everything was an experiment. But, if I could go back knowing what I know now, would I do it again? Absolutely. But would that make it any less scary the second time versus the first? Absolutely not. It's always a massive risk, but it was definitely one I'm glad I took, and I'm very lucky that it worked out for me, but it doesn't work out for everyone. So that is absolutely weighing on your mind constantly.
Absolutely. Before I pass you over, Cameron, I want to bring up the fact that you've done this all independently. Like, you've done it all yourself. You built it yourself, and that's massive because you have built this thing into a sim racing empire. I want to say this is, one of the biggest setup stops, if not the biggest, over all sim racing platforms. What does that mean to you to solo own the company? I built this myself, and I'm the only one that can make it or destroy it.
It's definitely crazy to me because on the one hand, I go into an iRacing lobby and everyone knows who I am. People I've never met, and they have very strong opinions about me. Some good, some bad. Some people really don't like me because I mean, you could make a very strong argument that I sort of opened Pandora's box on monetizing what many people viewed as a fun hobby. iRacing beforehand, people would share setups, they would trade information all the time, but now that it's become monetized via setup shops, a lot of people are a lot more protective, and you'll really struggle to find good quality free setups consistently that you can rely on. And so there's definitely the weight of that on the back of my mind, but what's really cool is, like you said, it's one of those things that I did, and it was crazy along the way, so many wild and insane things. And I remember one time really that summed it up, and the moment that sort of made it all sink in is I was down in Florida and I was doing a bunch of networking with the partner, and they happened to play golf with the guy that used to be the president of Sony. And so he mentioned it in passing, like, oh, I invested in this company, and this is what we do, and it's a video game company. And the former president of Sony, Jack Tretton, said, "Oh, I'd sit down for a meeting with him." And so I get a call, and he's like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this guy?" And I'm like, "You're BSing me. There's no way it's actually him." And he goes, "No, he said he used to do some stuff with video games and he was interested." And I'm like, "That's insane. That doesn't happen. This never occurs." And I'm like, it can't be the same guy. But went down to Florida on the chance that this was legit and sat down with a meeting. And I'm sitting across from someone that I watched at E3, someone that I grew up playing PlayStations, and it was blowing my mind. I'm like, this guy. I mean, this is a short tangent, but when the PS3 released, people said it was going to flop. It was going to be terrible. It was way overpriced. We don't need Blu-ray. We don't need HDMI. Just go with the classics, the AV cables, all that. And the PlayStation 3 is just too expensive. It's never going to work. And Jack Tretton really, I don't want to say bet the company on it, but people strongly pushed for, are we sure that this guy knows what he's doing? Because it's crazy. It's never going to work. 10-year lifespan of the PlayStation 3, it outsold the Xbox 360 and won that generation of the console. So for someone whose legacy was built on looking at visions 5 years, 10 years down the road and seeing how the market would develop, and him saying, I need to talk to this guy, that was one, a kick in the pants that, okay, this actually can work. This is going to pan out. And two, focusing more on down the line and always looking 10 steps ahead of where you are now is so unbelievably important. So it's crazy to me that I'm in the position that I'm in, and I know in the grand scheme of things, I am a micro celebrity in a niche corner of the internet that revolves around sim racing, but at the same time, it's really cool. It's something I'm really proud of. And if I have kids in a couple years and 20 years later I look at this, I'm gonna say, like, yep, I did that. I was on top of the sim racing world for a short time and got to do all these cool things, meet all these cool people, and drive some race cars. And I mean, it could all. What I always say is everything could end tomorrow. It could all blow up and everything's over exactly 10 minutes from now. and I'd be perfectly happy. I would love every minute of it and just be thankful for everything that happened. So I think that's the best way to sum it up. If it all ended right now, I would be very happy with how it all went.
That's big, and that's a really good way to view life, because it's like at that point you achieved all your goals, you've done everything you wanted to do, and I would imagine that must mean it must be very fulfilling to you. So that's really big, and we're all super proud of you. I'm gonna pass you over to Cameron Romano and see what questions he has for you.
Yeah. The one question that kind of just popped into my head, briefly, you mentioned that you're going to do some testing in the near future.
Mhm.
With all of your years of building these setups, um, is that going to carry over into the real world? Like, let's just say you're running a few test laps and you say the car's too loose, try doing this instead of that. Is that going to translate into real life, or is it something that's going to be totally different? And the guys that you're talking to are going to be like, "What the heck is this kid talking about?"
I'm excited to find that out for myself as well, because I don't really know how well it'll carry over. There could be some things that work well. There could be some things that don't. I do know when I ran at Winchester, so I don't know if you've ever seen Winchester Speedway, but it is the steepest banked asphalt oval um, active track in the country. So it is steeper than Daytona, it is steeper than Talladega, it's steeper than Bristol, and it's a half mile. And it was insane to me. Like, you go into this corner and you are just sideways. I mean, it's I think it's like 38 degrees of banking. And what was really cool though is I went out and my first laps of practice at the track, I came back in and they're like, "Okay, what's up with the car?" And I'm like, "It needs this, this, and this." I said, "The gear's too long. If we need a shorter gear in it." Um, I feel like the car's really tight in the center. That's where I'm getting beat. And I feel that something might be off with this. And they checked it out. They're like, yeah, you're actually down a lot of RPM compared to the other guys. They went back and compared videos. They're like, these guys are, they could tell just by the tone of it, they're a lot higher RPM. We're all wide open. So they changed the gear. They changed some stuff with the front end and got it turning a lot better. And I went out for second practice. I did, I think, 10 laps in the first practice. Second practice, I go out and I clicked off like 30 laps, and just every single lap a little bit faster, a little bit faster, a little bit faster. And I think my fastest lap was like 25 of 28 that I ran. Um, what's really unfortunate is I wish I could have learned more over the course of that weekend, but the engine started going bad, and we were like, we didn't know how bad the damage was. We're like, okay, is it just running a little hot, or are we about to blow the whole thing up? And turns out the answer was we're going to blow the whole thing up. So I think with the testing I'm going to do next month, what's really nice is the team I'm looking to do it with will have their regular driver there. So not only will that be a great benchmark for me, because if we go out and he's running 15-second laps and I'm running 16s, okay, I've got a major disconnect and I need to be better as a driver. But if he's running 15.5s and I'm running 15.8s, okay, maybe we need to tune the car a little bit more to my liking. And I think what I'm going to do to start is say, hey, I'm feeling tight in the center. What are you guys going to do to the car? And then, I'll have my notes like, okay, tight in the center. I would go up a quarter round on both track bars, or, give it a little bit of right rear tire pressure. And then but not say that out loud, and then base what they're going to do off of it. And so if they say, oh, we're going to take some wedge out of it and we're going to adjust left side tire pressures, I'll be like, okay, well, here's how I would think how that would work in the sim if I were to make those adjustments. And obviously not saying this out loud, but like, okay, here's what I would expect the car to do, and then get in the car and drive it and compare it to how it actually does. So I mean, it'll be definitely a huge advantage for me as a driver if I can relay to the team exactly what I'm feeling and what I think will help, because then they can base it off of what they'll do and see how find that happy medium in between. But I think there's definitely a lot of a strong advantage, I'll say, to the driver that knows what their car needs and can relay that to the team on how to adjust it for them.
My thank you for that, by the
Yeah.
way. My next question. I know you mentioned earlier working up at Stafford Speedway for a couple of years. I've always wanted to go up to Stafford Speedway, by the way. I follow them on social media. I've followed them for a while. I think that's probably some of the best short track racing the Northeast has ever seen. I just hate the fact that I live 2.5 hours away from there and I have to go to work the next day. Um, what are you, whenever you do make your first official start, um, how are you going to, I, I guess what I'm trying to piece together is like how are you going to react to everybody else around you? Because obviously everybody has different driving styles. Um, some people race a little bit more aggressively than others, some race conservatively. So what do you think we would expect from you when you do make your start?
I would say definitely expect a lot of conservation is going to be my main goal. Because one, I don't want to wreck the car. I would feel terrible if the team put together this car, put all this work in, and drove all the way to the track. They're working on it for hours, and I get in the car and I go out and I wreck it. I would be so mad at myself. I would feel terrible for them. Also, it would be really expensive because that comes out of my pocket, and so I don't want to wreck the car. But also I approach it with the mindset of I'm very very fortunate to be in this position, and I also have I do understand that this is not going to be my career. I'm not going to ever, at least I don't think, be in a position where making money from racing is my livelihood. You know, if I get to go out and run a race and finish where I finish, that's going to be enough for me. And so I don't need to go out and wreck other people. I don't need to wreck myself. I don't need to do anything crazy. I don't need to make enemies. I'm very fortunate to make every single start that I do. There's a lot of guys that are out there cutting their teeth because they want to do this for the rest of their life, and it's not my role to step in their way. It's not and it's not right of me to do that unless I'm going in with the mindset of I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And would I love to? Would that be very cool to do? Absolutely. I would love to, someone sees me and they're like, wow, this Jeff Maconi guy, we're going to put him in a race car, cover all his bills, and he's going to race for us full time. Is that going to happen at 26 years old with my very limited experience? Probably not. And I understand that. So the main goals are going to be for me with ARCA, go out there, get a good finish, get some good points for the team, because that's really what all the teams are fighting for is owners points. So if I'm going out there and I'm running with people like Alex Club or Wilcox Motorsports or Fast Track or those smaller teams that are there but never really running for the win because they're getting outspent 30-1. It's just not conceivable for them to be racing for wins. Their goal is get a good finish, keep the car clean, and get some good owners points. So if it's a 20 car field and I've got 15th place speed, if I can bring the car home 10th, that's a win. I mean, if I bring it home 15th, that's solid. That's what they expected out of the car. That's what it was capable of doing, and I didn't stand in the way of it. If I'm smart, I survive wrecks. I take care of my tires. I put myself in a good position to get lucky dogs. And I go out and I finish in 10th place, we're going to be celebrating at the Waffle House because that's just what the team needed. So, will I ever drive an ARCA car that's capable of going out and should be winning races? Maybe. It's a big price gap to go from a mid-pack car to a front-running car, but maybe I'll get the opportunity to do that, and that would be really, really cool. As for the late model stuff, I think that lets me be a little bit more aggressive. The equipment is a lot closer. There's one team in particular that I'm really hoping to run a race with. They're out in Pennsylvania, and they race at Jennerstown. So if that all comes together, and none of this is set in stone, but if that all comes together, they would have a really good car, and I could go out, and that car should finish top 5. I should have a chance at a win. And so if I'm in a car that I think can win the race, and I'm running, second place and the white flag's out, I don't care if I'm a part-time guy. If I get that run, I'm taking it. If I got to push him out of the way, not wreck him. If I got to just get in there, push him up the track, and go for a win, I'm absolutely gonna do it. But the biggest thing is I'm old going into this at 26, but that gives me the wisdom and experience to approach it with realistic expectations of where I'm gonna be. So to start off in ARCA, gonna run conservatively, take care of the car, and just put myself in a position to finish the race and go from there. But for late model stuff, if I'm in a good car and the guys think they can win it, I am going to give them 110% and bring that car home with a trophy or the fender in my hand.
I hope I get to see that in person.
I hope so
Um,
too, man. That'd be a lot of fun. And if you do get the chance to make the drive up to Stafford, it is absolutely worth it. Hands down, bar none. I've been to a lot of racetracks over the years, and Stafford takes the cake. And if any of them are watching it, hi Bonsa. I hope you're doing well. He's the guy that runs all the social media stuff, and he's a great guy. I learned a lot from him in the 2 years we worked together.
all right. Yeah. Again, I gotta go up to Stafford. I think their weekly races are on Thursday nights now, if I'm not
Fridays.
mistaken. Oh, they are on Fridays. Oh,
Yep. Friday nights, they are the best. You got to get there early. Watch the heat
yeah.
races. Get there for I think usually 7 o'clock the features start, but get there early. Watch the heats. It really is the best racing that you will ever see. The late models are so cool. I would love to drive a late model at Stafford. That's definitely on the racing bucket list.
All right. So now, are you talking about like the regular late models that they run, or the limited late models, the
Either
ones
one
with the
would
20
work.
spoilers?
Yeah, either one would work. They both have um they have their own unique challenges. I like the late model division because they're a lot more elbows out. Those guys are aggressive, so
Oh,
probably to start
absolutely.
run a limited because those are a little bit tamer. They're a little bit slower, but I mean those are very good races to watch. But yeah, if you want a series where you can throw your elbows out and door someone and not hurt feelings, the Stafford late models will absolutely do that for you. They are very cool.
Oh, absolutely. Gonna shout out real quick Stafford Motor Speedway, home of the SK Modifieds. And on that note, we're gonna pass it back to DLB for any more questions.
So you build up the Maconi setup shop. The next step was entertainment, Maconi Entertainment, which you have gotten to work with iRacing and their platforms. You have, build up the YouTube channel and the Twitch following. Tell me a little bit about that, how it came together, and how did you get on iRacing's radar to be able to work with them?
That was a fun time. It was after the 2023 Podium 500, which if you are involved in sim racing, you know that story through and through. That was the craziest night in sim racing history, and I remember it fondly. And I'm still friends with a lot of people that worked behind the scenes there, and I'm glad it all worked out. But I ended up stepping away from another broadcast network at that time where I was a commentator, and then a couple months later, I was like, man, we put on all these events and we pay just so much money for other broadcasters to come in, and I'm like, why can't why can't we do that? Why can't we bring that in house? And I looked into it and started talking to people and was like, listen, I don't want to pull you. I'm not going to pull you away from any other commitments. That was the biggest thing is nobody that works for me is locked in to only work for me. If all I ask is that if you agree to do a show on the network, that you show up to do it, and then if you can't show up, you find someone else to do it. But like, don't commit to a show for me and then go do another show for someone else. Like, if something comes up, that's one thing, but like, that's really the only bar that I have, and I think that's fair to ask of them. And everyone's been amazing, and so I got a couple producers and commentators on board. A lot of them started off originally as just personal friends, and I said, "Hey, I'm gonna do this, and we're gonna make it happen, and let it snowball from there." And so we started broadcasting our own events, and originally the plan was it was just a way to sort of keep costs down because I could either pay another company their overhead that they take in and their profits as well as the cost of labor, or I can just do the cost of labor and manage everything myself, which gives me control over the advertising, make sure that everything's up to par, make sure, and so that if there's ever any issues as well, like something goes wrong in a broadcast, which happens, that's life, no big deal. But if something ever happens, it's not an awkward situation of, well, a friend, you know, screwed something up and I'm paying them a bunch of money because they are, a broadcaster I hired in. Now it's okay, we screwed up. We're all part of a team here. Like, what happened? How do we fix it? And where do we go from there? And so, all in all, it was just a much healthier and happier way to approach it with how much broadcasting we were doing. And other groups saw our broadcast and were like, "Hey, I'd love to have your crew do our races." And I was like, I hardly even thought of that. That's a great idea. So then we got in other clients, and then we started um, broadcasting more shows. And when we signed our agreement with eNASCAR and iRacing, which was in 2023, we sort of realized with it, hey, we can, we're sponsoring the C-Fix series. We should be broadcasting that. We'll take the top split every week. We'll broadcast that. So we went to iRacing and said, hey, this is, a series that we're sponsoring. You're not using your channel. We take on all the costs. It's a win-win. You get free air, you get a free show on your air. We get to promote our show and our series. You get more people signed up. There's, nothing but winning for everybody. So that worked out really well. And we have our conditions with them. They definitely made us step up our broadcast to the next level because they wanted to make sure it was up to their quality levels. And so we worked very hard to make sure that Drew Adamson and all of their crew were happy, and they were great in supporting us. It's not like they're sitting there cracking the whip and beating us down, but they gave us a lot of support to take us to the next level. And we carried a lot of that over into other shows we do. We picked up Road to Pro and started broadcasting that onto their channels, and it was really cool for all the times that we've gotten to do it. It's really cool having hundreds of viewers, and the chat is all lit up, and it's just numbers that we're never going to be able to replicate on a private network when we're going on to iRacing's network itself. So it really did come from one event where everyone in the broadcasting world sort of splintered, and I said, okay, here's the guys that I really liked working with. I think we can, bring this to life. And originally it was going to be just for Maconi Setup Shop shows, and it's grown. And I mean, even right now we're live. I've got that up. I've got a TV up there, and I'm checking in on my guys, making sure that they're all good because they're doing a broadcast for a group called Goat Locker Racing, and they're a charity out of Indiana. So I met them, and they sponsored my late model when I ran at Winchester, and we're going to work with them again this year. So all of that stuff snowballs quickly, and you learn how fast, how tight-knit the sim racing community truly is.
Absolutely. So I'm thinking, first off, I would imagine your parents must be incredibly proud and surprised, because I know it's kind of hard at the beginning for the older generation to get this whole like online social media. Oh, I'm gonna be a content creator in my case, or oh, I'm gonna go build car setups for simulator race cars. Like, it's hard to understand that, and for your parents to be able to kind of see that unfold and this whole vision take place, I'm sure that they must feel incredibly proud. But obviously being a race car driver is next on the board, but what's next for Maconi Setup Shop, or the entertainment, or just you and your personal life? Like, what's your next goals in life? Because I'd imagine you're probably to a point of where you feel like you either done it all and you feel complete, or you're just super motivated and driven to have that itch to find what's next.
It's sort of a mix of both right now. I think a lot about where I am and where I want to be, and because you do sort of have that come to Jesus moment where you're like, okay, I'm gonna get in a race car. This is something that could hurt or even kill me. And so, I mean, I definitely sat down with my parents and said, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. And they've been very supportive of me from the beginning. I went to visit them for spring break when COVID started, and then basically built the business for 3 or 4 months when no one could travel or do anything out of a spare bedroom in the house. And they've been incredibly supportive along the way. And it was really my dad who said to me, when are you going to take it full time? And I'm working as an engineer at this time, and I'm like, oh, that's crazy, Dad. I'm never going to do that. And he goes, oh, you should think about it. If you can put together a good plan and figure out where it's going to go, then it's a real opportunity to see how it happens. And so he was a big part of it. And I talked to my parents literally every day. They're huge parts of my life. I love them dearly, and they don't love the racing part. Being 100% honest, they are not thrilled that their son is strapping himself into a steel cage at 120 to 200 miles an hour, which I understand. I fully get that. I understand their perspective entirely, because there's no logical reason to do it, to race. There's no benefit to it. Nothing. I guess in a sense, nothing good ever really comes from it aside from personal satisfaction. I mean, the reason that, at least for me and from what I understand from other racers, is it's just a love of the competition, and to you want to do it. You want to feel that thrill. You want to race a car around other people and see how you stack up. It is, in my opinion, the ultimate form of competition. There is no other sport like it. And part of that is the danger, part of that is the adrenaline, the thrill, but the biggest thing is, if you don't have that desire yourself to get in a race car, to prove yourself on the track, it's really hard to understand why someone would want to do it. And so I spent years thinking that I would never do it. Um, I really came to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to drive a race car, and that was okay. And then the opportunities have presented themselves, and that mindset had to change. But I do fully understand that perspective of it's just dangerous. There's nothing good that comes from it, and I get that. And so I guess the next steps for me is figuring out where I want to take it. If I get in an ARCA car and I'm like, hey, if I go do this test next month and I just suck, and I'll take it on the chin and I'll say, listen, I either got to practice more, I got to do more testing, or hey, it's just not for me. I tried, it didn't work out, and that's okay. And if that happens, I can honestly say I will still be content with everything that happened. If I go out and I suck, at least I tried it and I had the opportunities to do so, and I didn't let them pass. Now, if I go out there and it's, hey, I'm taking a 15th place car and I'm running top 10, I'm doing some real work that's better than what they're expecting. Okay, maybe we'll reconsider. We'll get some, bigger sponsors on board and see where it goes. But for now, for me, it's continue what I'm doing, keep building up Maconi Setup Shop, keep growing the brand and working with our customers, and seeing where we can take it. Maconi Entertainment's a lot of the same, just continue growing it day by day. And for the racing side of it, I don't know how it's going to go. I haven't had enough time in the seat yet to really see where my potential is. I could be really, really good. I could be really, really not. So wherever that shakes out, I'm going to be, I can say this with confidence. I'm going to be happy either way, and I'm going to be thankful for every opportunity that I get, and every day that I wake up and get to do what I do. I'm very lucky and very thankful for it.
Absolutely. I got two final questions before I pass you back to Cameron for the final time. First one is, what keeps you motivated to push through day by day, and what just keeps you driven? Where does the drive come from? Where does the motivation come from? Because being a businessman, running an empire, running something that's so massive in any capacity has its challenges. And there's days where it almost just makes sense, where it's like, I just want to lay in bed today. I don't want to do anything. But what's keeping you driven? What's keeping you waking up every day? And, whether if that's, we're going to do this, or just having the anxiety of, well, what if this doesn't go right? What if this doesn't go correctly? What if this deal falls through? What keeps you driven? What keeps you motivated today?
It's the fact that I get to do this at all, because you're right. Those days certainly do happen where you're like, man, it'd be so much easier to just quit. And I mean, I would be lying if I hadn't said there were times where I just threw up my hands and I'm like, I'm selling the business. I'm done with this. I can't do it anymore. And you'll have that at times with every really, really high that you have, you'll have an equally low. And the biggest thing that keeps me motivated and keeps me going is the fact that I get to do this at all is really an incredible blessing. I'm so lucky that I get to do it, and all of the people that I get to work with, all of our customers, all of our builders. It's really cool seeing them have extra spending money. They're not doing it as a full-time job, but one of them goes, he works his 9 to 5, and then he's got kids. So he takes this money that he makes from working on, virtual race cars. He takes it, he goes, gets his kids ice cream. He goes, takes them to the amusement park. He went on vacation with his wife for the first time, and that was all a big part of it. And so that's really cool to be able to hear all of those stories from them. It's amazing getting to work with all the people. And I mean, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't cool that I go into an iRacing lobby in any series, road, oval, whatever, and people are like, "Are you that guy? Are you Jeff Maconi?" And it's, yeah, that's me. I'm the guy that does this for a living. And so the biggest thing that keeps me going, I'd say, is the iRacing community, and all the people in it are really, really special. It's a special online community. I love it dearly. There's days where it makes me want to tear my hair out, but all in all, I am very thankful for everyone in the community, whether they like me, they hate me, they have no thoughts. It's really cool that I get to be a part of it and do this every day.
Absolutely, that's incredible. I mean, you worded that so perfectly. There's a lot of days I feel the exact same. So my final question before I go back to Cameron is, this is for all the sim racers out there. This is for everyone that wants to say iRacing is the pinnacle. This is as real as it gets. Well, I asked real race car drivers this, and I feel like they always have a bit of a bias with their answer. So I want to ask you this. Being on an iRacing late model versus being on a real life late model, how close is it? How realistic is it? Is it comparable, or is it a complete miss?
It's comparable. And if you don't even get the one-to-one comparison of the car on the track, you absolutely learn the racecraft. Racing is just as much a mental sport as it is physical, and it's a very physical sport. I mean, you'll get out of the car, you'll be tired. I mean, I made the mistake of sitting in my car between practices for an hour, and I didn't have a blower or cool suit or anything, and I was just so pumped up on adrenaline, and then I realized after an hour, I'm like, oh, I should not have done that. Even just sitting in a race car was, 100 degrees and wore me out, and I felt sick and dehydrated. So, let alone when you're out there driving for as long as, some of the pros do. So, but just as much as it is physical, it's mental. You have to be focused. You have to be disciplined. You have to not let one tiny mistake cascade into more mistakes. Because if you go out and you spin the car out, let's say you get loose on your own, you make a mistake, you spin yourself out, you don't even damage anyone else, you're going to be so mad at yourself for making that mistake. And you're like, okay, I got to make up all that ground. I got to make up the time loss. I got to make sure I get a good finish for the team. You have to stay in control. You can't make a mountain out of a molehill, and you can't let yourself get so psyched out that you don't see the forest for the trees, and you just have to stay focused, and that's really, really tough to do. I've experienced that in a limited capacity behind the wheel. But as for the one-to-one comparisons, I actually haven't had the opportunity yet to go from iRacing car and track to a real world car and track. I'm excited to do that, hopefully in the ARCA series. Now that we're getting new ARCA cars as well, that's going to be very cool. But I can absolutely say that the mental side of it, needing that discipline, needing that focus, and needing to know when to race someone, when not to, and what battles are just not worth fighting, is absolutely very crucial and a big thing that iRacing teaches.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like that's a very, very good answer. I mean, I feel like the handling of the cars must be a little bit comparable, but it's definitely something that with every driver we get, a lot of them say that it's very close in a lot of aspects, but I guess it's very hard to nail the handling to a T to what iRacing has. Was there any even with just the late model, was there any similarities to what it handled like on iRacing?
I did my testing for Winchester at Bristol, and at Winchester you run up towards the wall, and so I tried to mimic that on on iRacing, and I would say it definitely gave me a level of comfort going from a half-mile track that's steeply banked on iRacing to a half-mile track that's steeply banked in the real world. Um, Given that we were fighting some engine problems, I was definitely down on power the whole time, so I was a bit off the pace. But when compared to the other car, which was also having engine issues, I was still putting up consistent times, and I was at least consistent lap by lap. So I would say at the very least, it definitely felt similar, and the fact that I could go out and be consistent. I'm not running like one lap is 20 seconds, the next lap's 18, then 22, then 20 again. It was just, I forget the exact lap times we were running, but like it would be within 2 or 3 tenths of each other from the start of the run to the end, which isn't easy to do. But when you're consistent like that, I think definitely a big part of it was thanks to iRacing and knowing how the car would be after 10, 20, 30 laps, even of practice.
Absolutely. Before we wrap this thing up, I'm going to pass you back a Cameron one final time for a final question or two, and let's hear it, Cameron Romano.
All right. My final question is, if you could go back in time and tell 4-year-old Jeff Maconi, hey, you're going to race in one of these cars one day. Is 4-year-old Jeff Maconi going to believe you?
No. There's if you told that to 24-year-old Jeff Maconi, he wouldn't believe you. It's really unbelievable how quickly the world of racing moves, and it was probably in July that I said, okay, I'm starting to get up there. At the time I was 25, and I'm like, I'm gonna be 26, and that's awful close to 30. That's closer to 30 than I am to 20, and that's crazy to me, and I still can't believe that. Like, I mean, in my head, I'm still 18, 19 years old. Every time I go and buy beer at the store, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this. When you're 21, you're like, oh, you're nervous about it, and even to this day, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm allowed to do this. This is perfectly normal and legal, and everything's good. And so in my head, I'm still 20, 21 years old, but I sort of had that realization of I'm getting older. And so yeah, when it wasn't until July where I said, okay, I'm gonna get in a race car, I'm gonna do this. Scared as I was, and as scared as I still am to do it, I mean, there's still a lot of anxiety before you strap yourself into a hunk of steel going 120 to 200 miles an hour. It's scary, and any driver that tells you they're not scared or anxious is probably lying to you, because I will be the first to admit it's scary. But your desire to compete overcomes that. But yeah, if you told me at 4 years old that I would be doing it, I wouldn't believe you. If you told me at 24 that I'd be doing it, I probably wouldn't believe you. And even now, to this day, I'll wake up sometimes in the morning and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go test an ARCA car next month, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna go test an ARCA car next month. Like, oh my god.
That's how I'm gonna feel when I do my hot laps at Pocono whenever I decide to redeem that. Yeah.
Get ready. Get
no,
ready.
So, little backstory. I wanted a specific Eric Jones diecast for Christmas.
Mhm.
So I asked my parents for that diecast. They couldn't find it anywhere. So they're like, hey, instead, you're going to drive a race car at Pocono.
That's awesome. So is that the driving experience that they have?
Yeah. So like
That's
Pocono, I
awesome.
guess they have their own version of like the Rusty Wallace experience or the NASCAR racing experience. So like you get a couple laps as a ride along, and then you get 8 laps. You just go all like flat out at Pocono.
I feel like that's what's
That's so
next, the
cool.
Maconi, like, driving experience.
Maybe. Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
we
I
just
never thought I'd have a setup shop. I never thought I'd have a broadcasting group. There is nothing that would surprise me anymore,
I
honestly.
can see
Listen,
that.
I will back that. I will back that. The Jeff Maconi driving experience. I will 1000% get
I
I
like
behind
it.
think
that.
as you get into your 30s and 40s, that's next. You go and start out with like some like cheap late models, and then have a little track day. I think you could budget it and actually make it work.
I mean, that is really not a bad idea. Land is cheap here in Tennessee, and you can put a racetrack together. And I will tell you this as well. I have done driving. I have done ride-alongs. it is so much scarier being a passenger in a race car than it is driving one. Driving one is scary. Don't get me wrong. It is nerve-wracking when you are behind the wheel of a car driving it, even at 100 miles an hour. When someone else is driving it, it 10 times scarier. So for that ride along, be ready because it is intense. You are going to remember that ride along just as much as you remember driving it yourself, if not more. You're going to be very surprised by that, I think.
I
It's a
did
good thing my
one.
parents.
I did one when I was 14 for the Richard Petty driving experience, and I was like, just kind of could barely see over the thing. The guy's like right up against the wall. I'm like, oh no, this is kind of cool. I'm like, I feel like we're going so fast.
Yeah,
it's funny.
It's
My
cool.
after the I think it was after the 2013 Daytona 500. My mom, who lives like 10 minutes away from the track, did the ride along at Daytona.
Oh
Now, just
God.
imagine.
Oh
Honestly,
God.
she had the time of her life. Like she's like holding on to the seat to like the safety belts, like white knuckle and everything, and you just see this massive permagrin.
Like, it's funny. So I was down at the ARCA test in Daytona, and part of that is the ride along. And so I was in the back of it was a honest to God a Honda Odyssey, and they were doing 140, and I'm in the third row seats. I'm sideways on Daytona. It was absolutely insane. And they're like, this is gonna be the scariest part. When you're behind the wheel driving, you'll be fine, but just hold on tight when you're in the van. And I thought they were messing with me, but no, it really is. And I also did I did like a track day up at the Corvette Museum because I live near it, and my girlfriend was there too. And I like the jerk I am, I'm like, yeah, you can just get in the car and just ride with me. I'll drive. You don't have to drive or anything. You'll just be riding along. It's gonna be fine. And they had photographers around the track, right? And you see in the pictures where we're on pit road, everything's good. We're in a Camaro, and she's all smiling and everything. And then we go out on the track, and they took a picture a quarter of the way through the first lap. We did 8 laps or I think we did like 5 laps or 6 laps at a time, and you see her a quarter of the way through the first lap is just terrified, just like gripping the armrest, terrified, wide eyed, and she got out. We raced like 3 or 4 different cars, and that was the slowest one. It was a Camaro. And she got out and she's like, I'm not doing that again. She's like, you're a jerk. I am not getting back in one of those cars. I felt so bad, but it was so funny. Oh, she had fun though. She looks back on it and laughs, so I can tell that story and not have to worry.
That's incredible. We had so many good conversations in this podcast. I don't want to keep you here too long, but where can the people find you, Jeff Maconi?
Well, I am very active on Facebook. It's just Jeff Maconi, and then on Twitter or X as well. I think it's just at Jeff Maconi. I should know that, but I believe it's just at Jeff Maconi. Um, it's at Maconi Setup Shop and at Maconi Entertainment, but the last half of entertainment doesn't have vowels. So ENTRTNMNT, I think. There might be an E in there. But you'll find it. Look up Maconi Entertainment. You'll find us there. Same thing on Facebook, Maconi Setup Shop, Maconi Entertainment. And yeah, we have MaconiSetupShop.com if you're looking for setups, MaconiEntertainment.com if you're looking for broadcasting stuff. But it's really cool, and I really appreciate you guys having me here. It's definitely a ton of fun, and thank you to DriveSmart for making this all happen. It's very cool to still be a part of that even a year later. I love those guys. They're great people over there. So if you're looking for a car warranty as well, make sure you check out DriveSmart. They are some great people behind the scenes.
Absolutely. DriveSmart.auto. You can join for just $8.25 a month, and the savings you're gonna get is more than what you're paying. So it'll be fun. Fun to read
I did not
into.
know it was $8.25 a month.
Oh,
that
you
actually,
should check into
that,
it. Yeah.
I might be coming into a car here shortly, and so if that is the case,
I'll hook you up.
It is a 2005, so any manufacturer warranties are long gone on it, but it's in great shape. However, I may need to hit that up. So that is very good to know at $8.25 a month.
Oh yeah.
That's perfect.
Oh yeah. You be getting all of it. But I appreciate you for coming on, Jeff Maconi, for episode number 24. Cameron, how about it? Jeff Maconi, that was a good episode. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Great conversation with Jeff. Learned a lot of things. Looking to see what he does possibly in ARCA. Hopefully we get to see him run some late models. Maybe if we're lucky, maybe a few modified races. Who knows? But yeah, no, I think this is probably one of the best episodes we've done all year, and we're just getting started.
Absolutely. We'll be back next Wednesday night at 8 p.m. So stay tuned for that. I hope everyone did enjoy episode number 24 of Jeff Maconi. And with that said, we're going to cap it off there. Appreciate all you guys for tuning in here tonight, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.